So, what about? Let's talk about Opie and Anthony for a second, because it's weird. Like I didn't listen to that. I've been contemplating doing an illicit history of that show actually, because I was more of a Howard guy, I guess, and I started listening to Opie and Anthony like in 2013 when it was already off air, because I got into Patrice. So I would just go in these binges of listening to Patrice and Opie and Anthony, and then it was like, oh, they had Louis C.K. and Bill Burr, and they had all these great comics, and because I had just only known like Howard Stern knockoff, and one of those guys is like a fucking deranged racist. That's all I knew about the show, and.
Well, he's more than just a deranged racist.
He's also a Howard Stern.
Does good impressions. Yeah.
That was good. Yeah. See, I could do some of this comedy shit. He does good impressions. No, that was what I learned on the show, was that there was actually some talent there, which made it more disturbing. And then it was like, it seemed like there were these different things that came out of the O&A universe that actually had to do, like some was really, really horrific. Like, this was part of like the online subculture that led to the fucking alt-right.
Oh, there's an episode where like they made this. There's this peripheral character on the show, Stalker Patty, and she was like a homeless lady, or she had trouble paying her rent or whatever.
Oh, Jesus.
And they like put a $2,000 check for her rent on the floor, and then they put mouse traps on the floor, made her crawl around naked to find the rent. Wow. And Patrice and Bill Burr are there, and they're like, I need a shower after watching this. This is like bad. But when you're like a 14-year-old kid, you're like, oh, this is comedy. I want to do this someday. If it's on the radio, it's obviously fine.
So it's like, there's the through line isn't even just the racism and the sexism. It's just like the pure, just human depravity.
Cruelty, yeah.
Just like, hey, let's just be really disgusting, grotesque people.
There was another thing where they like took like T-shirts and stuff and threw them out the window, and then when people would go to get them, they'd yell with a bullhorn that they were like poor. They'd be like, "What? You can't afford clothing?"
So it's just like mean-spiritedness.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's and then there was this whole element of like Patrice O'Neil, who's one of the most. I'm friends with Dante Nero, who did stand up with Patrice, did his show. He was on this show, and he had that funny experience in connection with the Proud Boys, which is one of these other like fucking toxic swamps that come out of this universe. But Patrice was amazing because on one hand, Patrice was hysterical, really funny. In fact, let's play a minute of Patrice. This is Patrice, February 2010, talking about Fight Club with Opie and Anthony. Then this is a kind of vintage Patrice sort of rant.
Hi guys,
Right, exactly.
How are you doing? It's Tyler Durden. So what would Tyler do?
Because it's all tough and stuff. He's got the soap. He's
Project Mayhem. Project Mayhem. And that movie is such a heroic movie. Two guys who are lame. It's a lame guy hero movie.
You know what, Patrice?
Dude, let me tell you something.
Problems.
I know that. Look at. I'm willing to take this pressure.
Mm-hmm.
I saw that movie, and when I saw it, the first thing I hit, I leaned back, crossed my arms. I saw the whole thing. I said, "This did nothing for me." But I think I've run into the holy grail of something white. Like, I think I saw some shit that I didn't supposed to see. It's self-hate, guilt, the burden of white guys who can't be men.
Well,
I'm telling you
the burden of having to keep up with the Joneses, as they say,
and the burden of dishonesty, the burden of having to go to work and say blah blah blah. And so when I say weak, I don't mean like, but it's like it's this.
I understand what Patrice is saying.
It's a dream movie.
Yeah,
I'm dreaming. I'm a better man movie.
Right.
That's what Tyler Durden is.
So, all right. So first, talk about how funny he is. He was hysterical.
Yeah, I just feel like he was just far and away better than every other comedian.
Clearly,
he was like smart and insightful, but he was smart in a way that like you don't get from reading books. He just had a wisdom about
It's just perceptive.
Perceptive.
He read everything perfectly.
Yeah.
And then So on one hand, he's there, and he's like this one-man debunk machine. And it's funny because you hear Anthony there. That's the super racist guy.
Yeah.
They have this great radio report.
Mm-hmm.
Clearly did great content together. And in some ways, he's there just dealing with this fucking geyser of bigotry and just smacking it all away because he's smarter, funnier, more talented.
Yeah.
And then on the flip side, Patrice, and I say this as like, you know, I don't just chip this out for everyone. You're a massive misogynist. like an objective misogynist. And so there's this other lane of the show where you could see, which isn't to say he totally had some, absolutely sometimes can be super insightful about that stuff too.
Yeah.
100%. But there was absolutely also a misogyny there.
He would say super insightful stuff about race, and then he would literally say stuff like, women can't be leaders. They're too you can't have that brain running things. They're too emotional. Right. And mean it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It was like go from like fucking like from Cornell West to Dice Clay.
Yeah.
But do you think like, I mean, it's just that this show still lives on. There's still Reddit threads about this show. All of these different people, which is insane. And there's like, you could see it like, okay, did this comedy on some level, it influenced, I mean, especially through the fact that Patrice and Chris Rock and Bill Burr and all these great comics were there. It influenced basically anybody who's at all involved in comedy, which I didn't know. Then there's like this lane in which it clearly, like you have this guy, Anthony's just spewing and attempting to normalize racism in every possible way. Then the fucking alt-right Proud Boys thing, and then also, you know, and like the fucking, you know, different like racist subcultures and sexist subcultures. Like, why did this thing have such a big pull in like internet subculture? Like, why is that such a thing for people still?
Why did the O&A show?
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe it's like a throwback to when people thought things were actually funny, because I think the show is objectively funny. And I think Nick DiPaolo is another example where it's like he's a super funny stand-up. He has this bit that I love about To Catch a Predator, where he'll be like, I'm amazed at how cheap some of these pedophiles are on To Catch a Predator. They show up with like a bag of Subway sandwiches. And he just does a bit about like the sandwiches that pedophiles show up with. He's like, is that a 6-inch tuna on wheat? Somebody's getting anal.
Oh.
Yeah. Or I don't know. Maybe I'm paraphrasing, but
maybe I'm paraphrasing. But then shockingly,
the
his
stuff
politics
that he says
terrible.
Are terrible. Yeah.
Yeah, you never would have guessed that from that bit that you just shared with us.
All right. Well, people are complicated.
No, people are complicated. But well, let's do.
Are you gonna bleep that out? That I use that word?
No. Okay. No, we're here. We're live.
Right. Oh, okay.
Yeah, nice. You can set off all sorts of alarms here, buddy.
Yeah.
You just enjoyed that Michael Brooks Show video, and you can get a lot more by subscribing to us here at the Michael Brooks Show YouTube channel. It's literally right there.